listening to the Cameras and Confidence podcast with me, your host, Paige Ewing, photographer and online educator. Together, we will explore the basics of using our cameras, but also how to turn visual storytelling into profitable social selling just with your mobile phone. I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur, wife, and mom of two, and I'm going to deliver you my very best photography advice with a dose of inspiration, real-life humor, and motivational pep talks on ways to show up confidently in your life and in your career. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. I have an amazing photographer and first-time author with me, H.M. Palmer. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Paige. Thank you so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to this.
I know, me too. So how do you want me to refer to you during this interview?
You can call me Hannah. That's fine.
Hannah. So Hannah is also how I know Hannah. Hannah and I go way back. We used to be photographers together. We would shoot weddings and all sorts of hoopla. We would just get into a lot of trouble, basically.
It's true.
Yeah, but we always produced bomb pictures. We had really, really good pictures.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We were a good team.
And we still are. So we're just venturing out into other talents and gifts that we have besides photography. Hannah, do you agree that photographers, the way we show our work, really is a reflection of who we are?
I think so. I think that's very true. I think that people's styles, like the light and airy photographers, tend to be a little more whimsical and romantic in their views and their taste. And then maybe the dark and moody, they tend to be a little bit more mysterious in how they operate. So I think there's a lot of truth there. Yeah.
That's so good. So good. So let's go ahead and get started. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit of your background and history on how you got into photography?
I would play around with my aunt, with her. She had a Nikon D90, and at Christmas and family functions and things like that, we would just kind of play around with the camera. And my dad noticed my interest in it, in photography, and he said, that would be a really good hobby for you to pick up. And my parents got me my first DSLR camera. It was a Nikon D3000, and it was actually when Wolf cameras were still around.
Oh yes.
They got it from Wolf Camera, and I just started playing around with it, and this was like high school time, so of course like my friends wanted to take pictures, and then it got to the point where some folks noticed and were like, hey, why didn't you take our family photos? And so I did some of that, and then it got to the point where like I was getting a steady stream of inquiries to do families and seniors and babies and all that kind of thing. So I was like, well, I might as well kind of get a little bit of income off of this, at least to pay for the equipment, because as you know, Paige, it's not inexpensive at all.
Right.
And so I started doing families, I started doing babies. It wasn't any good for the longest time.
Babies are hard to photograph. They are the hardest, especially newborns.
Oh, they are. And at that time we slapped like sepia filters on everything and thought it looked amazing.
Right.
Too.
Right, exactly.
So I mean, I look back at my very first year or two of photography, and I just cringe. But you know what? Everybody's got to start somewhere. Yeah. So I try not to be too hard on myself about that. But anyway, good times, good memories.
Yeah, so definitely.
Then I got hooked up with you, which, background on that is you and I knew each other before we started working together photography. We've known each other for a hot minute.
That's right.
From, you taught where I went to high school, and my sister was in one of your classes, and my dad and Michael being in the car industry. So I remember when you put up that you were looking for an intern.
Right.
And I think at that time, maybe you weren't exclusively a wedding photographer, but that's a lot of what you were doing at that time. Right. I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. And so I remember I applied. I remember like getting my Pinterest board together and everything to apply. And I was super excited. And for whatever reason, you decided to pick me as the intern. I don't know why. You probably regretted it in the long run.
No, not at all.
But then working with you is what got me into weddings, and that's kind of where I've landed today. I mostly second shoot weddings
Mm,
because I do have like a weekday job. And so giving clients, the bride and groom, the time that it requires to be
yeah.
the lead photographer on a wedding is a pretty big commitment. And I just don't want to disappoint anybody there. So I mostly second shoot weddings now. And then I also still do some engagements and some families and things like
Cool.
that here and there.
What is your best resource for someone who's wanting to get into photography to how to teach themselves maybe to work with a DSLR camera, or what lens would be the best starter lens to use for someone who's just now getting started? Maybe they're just amateur at home, I want to take pictures of my kids, or
Right.
this could transition into what you did, actually being able to charge for your services.
Right. For resources, of course, Cameras and Confidence with Paige. That's a fantastic place to
Thanks for
go.
the plug.
Um, yes, absolutely. I've learned a lot on taking photos on my iPhone from you that I had no idea. So I'm not kidding when I say that. You're definitely the place to go. Also, I would say a couple of different things. I would say if you are looking to be a photographer in a certain field, reach out to people in that field, through social media and things like that, and see if you can't, maybe even pitch them your own internship to them so you can learn hands-on from somebody who's been in the field for a long time.
That's good.
Some photographers will even do mentorships where I believe in most cases they would be paid, but they really take you under their wing. They take you with you shooting, they critique your work. And it's a really good way to learn. But also, use what you got free. YouTube, I've learned a lot of stuff on YouTube, and I continue learning stuff on YouTube. As a matter of fact, I just got a new camera. I switched to the mirrorless platform recently, and I've been learning a lot about how the new setup works through
Yeah.
YouTube videos. So, so there's a lot of different places to go. I would say though, the best thing, if you can do it, which is it is a time commitment and it might be a little bit of a financial commitment, is try and get a mentor though. I think that's where you're really going to grow fast.
Awesome tip. And you're right. Everything is at our fingertips that is free. You can't get experience on YouTube. That's where connecting with the mentor, doing internships, being able to, like you said, go under somebody's wing and follow at a shoot, a wedding. I've taken a bunch of people along with me, and they've taken off. And it's just so great to see, if you just open the door for one person, what they're capable of being able to do. So thanks for sharing. What's your favorite lens on your camera right now?
I don't know how I'm ever going to find anything I like more than my 85.
Ugh.
It's going to be hard. Right now I've got my 35 on here right now. This is my Nikon. It's the mirrorless. It's the Z6 Mark II. I've got my Sigma Art 35 on there. This is a really great lens it's really versatile to pop on and catch, kids running across the yard or a sunset or, whatever, just everyday life. And it's really sharp. The Sigma Art is really sharp, but you just can't beat, I think you'd agree, Paige, you really can't beat that bokeh on an 85 on a prime lens.
It's my favorite. It just is so smooth and dreamy. It was my first lens. 85mm was my first lens, and I still go back to it all the time. Yeah.
It's beautiful. And they all have their place and they're all fantastic. And, I like shooting on a 35 and an 85, or if I'm at a wedding, sometimes a 24-70 makes the most sense, but it's really hard to beat that creamy bokeh on the 85.
Especially if you love portraits. All right. So let's transition to the book, because I want to know a little bit more. How did you go from a photographer to an author? But let me ask you this question. How seeing life through the lens of a photographer, seeing relationships, weddings, engagements, being literally behind the lens, a fly on the wall, and watching people go through life together, how did that help you write this book?
It helped me write it on the as far as the visuals. So I see, photography is visual storytelling. So I feel like it did kind of prepare me in a way to write this book, particularly in that when I was writing scenes, I would see it like almost in a cinematic way, and almost more like a videographer than a photographer. Because as wedding photographers, we work with a lot of videographers, and I get to see how they work, and it's really cool to watch their MO and how they set up scenes and how they capture the wedding day and the movement and all the great moments and things like that. And so I would say that the being a photographer helped me visualize all those components that I needed to get into the book that you might not really you don't notice them, but you would miss them if they weren't there. Does that make sense? Like the imagery and things like that, and how I'm setting, like if I'm thinking about posing someone for a portrait, I would kind of think of them the same way when I was trying to describe, like, Chris was leaning against the counter during this conversation with his legs crossed and, kind of setting the scene up, if you will.
You have to envision it. I never written books, but I do like to write blog posts and, short stories, but you have to envision it. And I think that so much of inspiration from writers comes from real life. Seeing something already and capturing the emotion in that moment and then being able to put it into words. So to ask you a question, do we have a name for this book?
We do. Yes. We do. It is called Not Before the Stars Burn Out. Yep, there it is right there. That is, I don't think that's going to be the final run we're going to do with the cover, but it's going to look very close to that.
Okay, it's beautiful. I love the colors because I'm a blue girl, so I like all blue. All right. Tell me, why did you write the book? What inspired you to do this?
I actually started writing this 7 years ago, about 7 years ago. It was around 2014, the beginning of 2014. So at the end of 2013, I went through a really hard period, probably the hardest period of my life to date. It was, I met someone in college and I fell in love and it didn't work out. And, it didn't work out for reasons that I understand. And I've been able to, over the years, come to peace with the situation, but it was a total rebuilding period of myself after that experience. And, one of the ways, so there's kind of a twofold thing here. Writing this story was a way for me to channel the negative energy, if you will, that I was experiencing after that time in my life. I was in a really dark place. You could probably have diagnosed me clinically depressed. I really didn't go out and do much. I kind of became a hermit. I was really broken. Probably the most broken point in my life. And so for me, writing was an outlet to kind of go through the grieving process and to heal, because you can't stop negative emotions from coming up. If you do and you try and push those down, they will come back out and they'll probably manifest themselves in like a really ugly way.
Yeah.
So I was trying to actually acknowledge those emotions and work through them. And writing was a way for me to literally channel those emotions out and put it in and leave it in the story. And so that's part of the reason. The other reason being I wanted to give people a story of resilience and hope and rebuilding, which is what Not Before the Stars Burn Out is really about. That's the main theme is human resilience and perseverance. And so it was kind of a twofold thing. It was something for me to do to work through that grief process, and then also produce a I don't want to say a guide for other people to do it, because it's not a self-help book. It's a fictional story, but it is something I think that hopefully people will read and get some ideas of hope and get some ideas of how to deal with hard times and work through grief and things like that.
Okay. So you said it's a fiction, but it was truly inspired by your real life. Can you tell us a little bit about the story? Like an introduction, the first chapter, should you say, if we were to look it up on Kindle, they give you like a tease. Tell us a little bit about what the story is about.
So the main character, her name is Rain. She is college age. She's from Georgia, and she ends up in Alaska And she ends up there during a very interesting time where she ends up being stuck there. It's this post-apocalyptic scenario. She has to kind of figure out her survival. She has to figure out how she's going to make it and move forward. She's thrown together with some random people. There's a little bit of a thriller. There's a little bit of a love story. And again, the themes being kind of rebuilding, perseverance, human resilience, and I also threw some other things in there as well, trying to get people to think about how our lives, how maybe some things we need to revisit in our lives today. For example, I talk a little bit about the diseases of abundance, if you will, and those being like, if you think about our world today, a lot of what plagues us is stuff that it results from like technology and from luxuries, like tech snack. Think about things like that.
Sure.
So I wanted to get people kind of thinking about that, in addition to the theme of resilience and the little bit of the thriller in there and the love story and things like that. So you'll follow Rain through where she starts out in kind of normal times, and then she ends up having to navigate her way through this extremely challenging territory, and finds out a lot about herself, and really just how much she can take, because I don't think that people realize you can take a lot more than you think you can.
Yeah.
You have to make yourself mentally tough. That's not saying that you can't have emotions and work your way through those and grieve and do all of those normal healthy things. But I really wanted people to think about that and understand that they can do so much more than they think they can when faced with adversity.
Gosh, well, you're preaching to me right now. You are preaching to me, because everybody can see themselves in a situation like that. And even just any given day, like today, I was faced with something right before coming on here, and I thought, this feels like a lot. But then I had to remind myself, you can do this. You can do hard things. Did you see yourself as Rain, the main character, or did you see yourself more as someone in the background creating the characters?
I definitely think there's some of myself in Rain, and as you read through, I think you'll catch some of those moments. Remember, because I started writing this in a time where I was trying to heal, so I think I maybe even inadvertently inserted myself into the character a little bit. But it wasn't like I was trying to write it as a memoir or anything. Like, I wasn't trying to make myself the main character, but I definitely can tell that part of me got in there.
Did you ever experience writer's block during this time?
Not terribly. The times I did were when I had to make something make sense. So like, if she's getting from her plane lands in one part of Alaska and I need her to be in another part of Alaska in a certain time period, I had a hard time, figuring out exactly how that was going to work. So I would get a little bit of writer's block in those periods. But as far as the story itself, it really flowed pretty well. Even though I wrote it like stream of conscious, I didn't like outline it. I just kind of word vomit.
Yeah, right.
Just wrote, and then kind of organize things later. So whenever I had to get into those like logistical details, sometimes I would end up with a little bit of writer's block.
Yeah.
But that's kind of normal, I think.
Sure. How did you work through it?
Oh gosh. There's not really one fix all for me for writer's block. Sometimes I think that it's maybe I've been pushing myself too hard too long. It's time to kind of step back, and I would take a couple days off at times. And actually, because I wrote this over the course of 7 years, like when I was working and getting my master's at the same time, I didn't work on it very much at that time. And so then when I came back to it a few months later, sometimes those details that were just so hard for me to get around, when I was writing on it every day, would be a lot easier when I came back to it, because I think all the while your subconscious is kind of dealing with it, if that makes sense. So when I took some time off and came back to it, it was a lot easier to get all the puzzle pieces to fall into place at that point, because
Sure.
I wasn't overextending myself and pushing myself too hard to where I was just running out of creative juice.
Well, when you are a creative, whether you're a photographer, a writer, a teacher, an entrepreneur, you have to rest. Your brain
Yes.
to take a break so that it can refuel. And that's in the rest is a lot of times when you get those ideas. Like, did you ever have like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning ideas where you just had to, oh my gosh,
I did.
figured it out?
Every now and then I would have something pop up, and I probably should have gotten up and just started writing at that point, but I'm a pretty deep sleeper, and it's hard for me to come out of sleep. So I would roll over and like type a note in my phone and,
Yeah.
and then go to sleep. But then when I got up the next day, I would, kind of develop that thought I had in the middle of the night.
Definitely. Okay, so the book is written and it's almost about to be on the shelves. Tell us a little bit about the publishing process and when we can get our hands on this book.
I feel like it was the end of 2018. I met with an author that's local. I messaged her and asked if she would meet with me, and she agreed to. And we sat down for coffee, and I asked her all about the publishing process. And she told me about how to write a query and all that. She spent a lot of time with it. Bless her heart. I should have bought her more than a cup of coffee, I'm sure, for as many questions as I asked her. But she was actually published through a large publisher out of New York. And so she told me about how to write a query to get a literary agent. The literary agent will then take your piece, your manuscript, to the different publishers and try and sell it and all of that good fun stuff. So I tried that route. Not to say you shouldn't go that route if you're thinking about publishing, but I got to the point where I was getting so many either no's or just no answers that I was just going to self-publish through Amazon. And about that time, as I was really trying to get it finished up and I was going to be looking to hire an editor before I actually self-published, a friend of mine came to me and said, hey, I just moved to Dahlonega recently and there's a publisher up here now. So do you want me to send your stuff in? And so I said, absolutely. So he did. He sent my query into Springer Mountain Press, which is who I'm published through. And they, Clay at Springer Mountain said, hey, this looks good. Have her send the full manuscript. So I did that. And then 2 months later, I heard back and he said it was a go and that he wanted to publish it. And it's been an amazing process with him. I've had a lot more say in things like the cover and my bios and the artwork and really the entire process. I've had a lot more say in it than I would have had I done the traditional route of getting an agent and a bigger publisher. So it's really been a blessing working with them. So there's a few different ways to publish, but so far indie publishing is working out pretty well for me. Our date is May 22nd for it to be launched.
May 22nd.
Yes, and we're going to do, the publisher has a bookstore in Dahlonega. It's called Bear Book Market, and we're going to actually be in the store that day, in the bookstore, with the copies, the first copies, May 22nd. But it's also going to be available on Amazon. You can buy it through, I believe, Barnes and Noble. It will at least be on their website. And then we're going to be trying to get it into some independent bookstores around Atlanta, and really is all over as far as we can get it. But Amazon's probably the easiest way to get a hold of it. I will be linking all that stuff on my social media, so you can just directly go to it. And also, I don't believe these will be out at the same time as the physical copies of the book, but we are going to be doing an ebook and an audiobook. The audiobook will come out later. The ebook will probably be shortly after the hard copies.
Awesome. So you mentioned finding it on your social media. So where can our followers find you on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter? Where are you?
I am on all of those. I'm mainly on Instagram though. So HM Palmer is where you can find me on there. It's a black and white icon photo.
I am proud of you. I am so excited to see this.
Thank
Always.
you.
And it's just so intelligent and on a different level of intellect than so many people whose paths I cross. And I know whatever you've written in that book is going to be so entertaining and so thought-provoking. I am excited. I'm going to get like the first copy that comes out. So
okay.
I will make sure we blast it all over my social media too whenever.
Yeah, thank you.
So last question that I'm always going to ask everybody is this. What lens of perspective do you filter your life through to see your picture clearly? And I'm not just talking cameras.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I have to be honest with you. I would say that I see my life through the lens of productivity probably more than I should.
Wow.
Um, I am one of those people who I make a list of things I need to do before I go to bed, what I need to do the next day,
Yeah.
and I punish myself, or I shame myself, I guess I should say, if I don't get everything done on that list,
Yeah.
even when it's not particularly realistic.
Mhm.
So I would say that for far too long, I've looked at my life through the lens of productivity, and I'm really trying to shift. And it's hard to do that. And I have, good days and bad days, but I think
Mhm.
overall, I'm moving toward the perspective of gratitude more and more every day. I have a reminder on my phone every day at 7 p.m. to stop and think about 3 things I'm thankful for, whether that be, my health, my family, my dogs, that it's sunny outside today, beautiful weather, whatever it is, because I really think that gratitude helps wire our brains for healthy
Right.
mindset,
Yes.
for looking at life through as a gift,
Mhm.
a gift that it is, and not taking it for granted. So I would love to sit here and tell you that that's the lens I use every day, and I'm fantastic at it. But that's just not the case.
Yeah.
It's something
Human.
I'm still working on, but that's what I'm working toward, is not seeing through the lens of what could be or what should be or what have you, but being thankful for what I have, and then whatever else fits into that through around the gratitude is fantastic. But that's what I want my main perspective to be.
Well, it's like our cameras when you buy it in the box. Most of them come with the default lens. It's like an 18 millimeter to
Yeah.
we shoot in auto and we think, well, this is the pictures it's going to produce because this is what I have. But when you
Right.
take that off and you put the 85 millimeter on,
Mhm.
it gives you that different perspective. And then you learn how to shoot in manual, that switching from productivity to gratitude. And
Right.
it changes the picture and the way you see it.
Right. Totally changes it radically. Yeah.
Well, Hannah, is there anything else that you want all the listeners to know about yourself, your book, your pet peeves so they don't do that whenever they send you messages on Instagram?
You
Anything
know,
to touch on?
At the moment, I'm in the place where I can respond to messages from people, and so I'm trying to do that. It might, depending on after the book when it comes out and how things go. If it ever gets to the point, I might have to do everything email only. But at the moment, please send me all the messages. I'm happy to answer them. I'm happy to answer questions. Obviously, I can't give spoilers alerts about the book, but whatever. If you have writing questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, can I still send you messages and you'll respond to me if I send you inbox messages on Instagram?
For now, I'll consider it.
Remember the little people when you get famous, okay?
I
Thank you
will.
so much for being here. I am so proud of you again. And I'm excited for all the listeners to not only find you on Instagram, see your work, but then also read your work when it comes out May 22nd.
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much.
I'm Not Before the Stars Burn Out, guys. Follow HM Palmer on Instagram. She is going to be a star. And you saw her here first. All right. Bye, Hannah. I'll see you later.
Bye. Thank you.
Hey, it's Paige, your host of Cameras and Confidence. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you want to stay plugged in every time a new episode drops on YouTube, be sure to subscribe. Also, like and share this video with your friends and family. I appreciate it so much. You have a phenomenal week, and I'll see you next time.